Michael Pittman Jr. had a career year with the Indianapolis Colts in 2023 and is set to hit the free agent market in March. Will Pittman be back with the Colts in 2024 and beyond, or will he take his talents somewhere else? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, and as always, I'm joined here by my fellow writer and analyst at Horseshoe Huddle, Drake Wally. Drake, I think it's safe to say Michael Pittman Jr. was the catalyst for the Indianapolis Colts offense for most of the season, if not for all of the 2023 season, because it seemed like whenever Pittman got going, the Colts offense got going. So it's going to be a big decision for the Colts here this spring, whether Michael Pittman comes back or not. And I think it could definitely shape what the Colts do this offseason. But how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic, and I absolutely agree. He had 109 catches on the season. The team altogether had 355 total, and there are a lot of eligible guys for that total of catches. So he basically had almost a third of the team's catches, and that really puts in, to perspective what he means to the team. I mean, Josh Downs was second with 68, and then it's a distant Alec Pierce with 32. So you talk about a guy that dominated the wide receiver core for the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, hell, I would challenge someone to really show me another team where there was just such a lopsided amount of targets thrown to one dude, and then that guy just goes out there and consistently performs with two different quarterbacks, now totaling 7 for his short career. Man, I really think he's earned a contract, and we're going to discuss that today.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be one of the top priorities for the Indianapolis Colts this offseason is making sure that Michael Pittman Jr. or trying to ensure that Michael Pittman Jr. That situation gets taken care of. So we're going to talk about that all tonight, but we're going to get started out first with our first super chat from the CFO himself, Patrick Gribe. Patrick's not going to be here live with us tonight because he says in Disney World this week with the family, but sending this for Drake anyway. Drink up. So you can always count on Patrick to send his regards, whether he can join us live or not. Appreciate all of the support, Patrick, as always. That you definitely earned the name of CFO. NFL Nerd says that Patrick won the Super Bowl. That's why he's going to Disney World, as the old saying goes. Good to see you here. Stats Matt, what's up, guys? Better not see a negative Nancy tonight. Stats Matt, we already know where he stands in this whole Pittman debate if the Colts should re-sign and bring back Pittman, and I'm sure he'll go to battle in the chat if people think otherwise. And then we've got Quentin here as well. Good to see you, buddy. As always, we thank you for all of your support. So we'll dive into everything surrounding Michael Pittman, give the scouting report on Pittman, talk about his importance to the Colts, what that contract extension might look like, and then Drake and I are going to predict and kind of give our thoughts whether we think Michael Pittman Jr. will be back with the Indianapolis Colts in 2024 and beyond. But if you haven't done so, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know whenever Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday night, or for the occasional breaking news episodes so you never miss us live. And if you can't catch us here on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on here as well. So make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. Now, before we dive into Michael Pittman Jr., we have the winners of our giveaway to announce. So last Thursday's episode, we talked to you guys about a special Madden giveaway. We had 2 copies of Madden 24 to give out, one for Xbox, one for PlayStation. Asked you to make sure you're following all of us, subscribe on YouTube, and tonight we are going to announce the winners. So we'll start out with the Xbox side. Plenty of entries here. And according to the random generator that I put everybody's entries in, Ryan Harrison Jr. is the lucky winner for the Xbox code at Ryan Harrison Jr. on X. So I will be sure to DM you that code. Congratulations, buddy. We appreciate all of your support. We're going to send you that code directly after this episode. And then on the PlayStation side of things, you'll never guess who it was. Truett Truss, our loyal listener, Truett, the man that said, hey, if I win, don't give me the code. We'll true it. You're such a loyal listener. You always provide us with super chats, and you're always in the discussion. We're giving that code to you regardless. So if you would like to give it to somebody else, by all means, that's your prerogative. But we will be DMing you that code after the show here. So congrats to Ryan, congrats to Truett, and thank you guys all for the support. And I'll be getting those codes out to you ASAP later this evening. So cap on the sticks, play some Madden, maybe start a franchise, get Anthony Richardson up to a 99 overall, take the Colts to a Super Bowl, and have some fun here during the downtimes of the NFL calendar. So Drake, now that we've got that out of the way, we've given out our Madden codes. Let's dive right into it. Talk about Michael Pittman Jr.'s future with the Indianapolis Colts. So, like I said, career year for Michael Pittman Jr. Looking at the stats here, 109 catches for 1,152 yards, 4 touchdowns in 2023. And as we had talked about it an episode ago, you had mentioned it, 7, and I quote because I remember this since it was one of our shorts that we put out. Michael Pittman Jr. has 7 freaking quarterbacks that has thrown him the ball in his career, and 5 quarterbacks just in the past 2 years alone. So just pretty incredible numbers for a guy that really hasn't had quarterback consistency since he was a rookie in the NFL. So let's just talk about the importance to start out, the importance of Michael Pittman Jr. To this Colts offense, what you saw this year, Drake.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? But everything. I mean, he was everything during the 2023 season, and I always like to go back to the Atlanta Falcons game because he wasn't playing in that game. He originally got hit in the Pittsburgh Steelers game coming down for a diving pass. He got his head rung pretty hard, and then he was good to go. And then he reported, hey, I'm not really feeling that well. I'm feeling a little dizzy. Reported symptoms of a concussion. So they sat him out, and holy cow, it was a completely different offense. Mm-hmm. The guys who dominated the targets and the catches were Will Mallory and Kylan Granson, if I remember correctly. And so he's absolutely earned the wide receiver 1 tag in the NFL. And when you talk about those 7 quarterbacks, he started his rookie year with just 40 catches. Okay. Then 88 with Carson Wentz, then 99 last year, now 109. Okay. So he just continues to ascend. It doesn't matter who's coaching. And by the way, now 3 head coaches this dude's played for. So he's had just constant change. Constant quarterback change, coaching change, scheme change. I mean, there's been constant shufflings on the offensive line. Jonathan Taylor's been in and out. So, the ground game really does. If you have an effective ground game, it helps the passing game and it helps the receivers. It doesn't matter what's going on. Michael Pittman just continues to produce. The one knock on him is his touchdown numbers aren't anything that's going to, blow your mind. Through 4 seasons, he's got 15 on, in his career. But the guy just continues to produce week in, week out. There for a while, he had like 7 or 8 straight games with 8 catches or more. That's just ridiculous, okay? And he averaged almost 10 targets a game. He had 156 targets in 16 games. That's bonkers. So you talk about a go-to guy. That's it right there. And one last thing, defenses knew where the ball was going, and he still went out there and made plays. And this is all the while your next best receiver is a rookie slot receiver that we didn't even think was going to start. All right, so Michael Pittman, man, you give that guy another solid weapon, or if Alec Pierce can really make a jump in year, it'd be year 3, he might even produce more. So, I think that the Colts really do need to put an imperative on getting him back in an Indianapolis, Colts uniform.
I want to give a special shout out to Logan Schmidt. Glad the GOAT could join us here tonight live for the episode. Appreciate you joining us, buddy. But yeah, Drake, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth there because I was going to talk about that Atlanta Falcons game as well. When Pittman was out with the concussion, it just seemed like the offense came to an absolute crawl. And with as many targets as Pittman received this year, that just kind of alone shows the importance of Pittman to this offense. A high volume guy, usually getting targeted around 10 to 12 times a game. So and we'll dive into this more in the weaknesses. A lot of people look at his stats and look at the yards, and with that many targets and everything, why doesn't he have more yards? Well, it's kind of what the Colts were asking him to do: play that short game, short to intermediate game, and pick up those tough yardage. So yeah, I think Michael Pittman was crucial to the Colts' success. A lot of times on third down, that's where Gardner Minshew would turn to. That's where Anthony Richardson would turn to, was Michael Pittman Jr. So when he's out of there, you definitely notice you don't have an alpha wide receiver that you can go to when Pittman isn't there. So I think the loss would be felt in a major way if Pittman wasn't re-signed or wasn't brought back to this Colts team in the spring. So, but let's talk about what Michael Pittman does so well and why he's so important to this offense. So Drake, in your mind, after watching Michael Pittman pretty much every single snap of Michael Pittman's career since he came into the league in 2020, let's dive through what his strengths are and how that has developed, not only just as he's gone along, but especially now under Shane Steichen and in this Steichen offense.
Man, what really jumps out to me is just his strength. Like, I mean, he's a real big issue to handle physically. Like, he's going to outbody you, he's going to outmuscle you. He can probably box you out on button hooks. He's just a big bodied dude, 6'4", 220 plus pounds. I mean, he's just a real physical problem for a lot of defensive backs that really aren't as big as him. And he also is a crisp route runner. He's an underrated route runner. And I think that he's also a 50-50 ball guy. You just haven't really seen a lot of it. You saw most of that actually with Carson Wentz, because Wentz would just chuck the ball down the field. Rivers was at the end of his career. Ryan really wasn't that guy for some reason. And then, of course, neither was Ellinger or Foles. Foles was, but he couldn't find anybody. So Minshew, okay, loved to target Pittman, but again, he didn't have a lot of those deep plays. But you talk about the 50-50 ball ability. Look no further than the Baltimore Ravens game. And multiple times this season he showed this, right? But I mean, that was it. I mean, he had his helmet ripped completely off, comes down with the play, and it inevitably leads to a Matt Gay game-winning field goal, like down the road. So, I mean, he's also, I think, a great blocker. I think that he is willing to block, and I think for a wide receiver, which a lot of guys at wide receiver, they're really not great blockers. I do think that he is a great blocker, and he's willing to do it, which a lot of times, if you're just willing to do it at wide receiver, you're probably going to be pretty good at it because you're hitting defensive backs and safeties for the most part. So I think that those are the things he does really well, but man, his hands are just great. I know that there was a knock. I can't remember if it was last year. Oh, this guy can't catch the ball. He's dropping balls left and right. What the hell were they watching? I mean, this guy is about as efficient as you can get. 70% last year, nearly 70%, basically 69.9 this most recent season as far as catch efficiency. So he's doing it, and he's getting targeted constantly, and he's pretty much the only real threat. Not to say Downs isn't going to get there, but yeah, man, his hands, his physicality, route running, 50-50 ball ability, and he also is a bruiser after the catch. So I think that those things, and amongst others, but those are really what stick out to me as his strengths.
Yeah, I think it definitely his hands stick out. A lot of people talk about drops. Well, when you look at what Pro Football Focus has to say about Michael Pittman, I think he only had like a 4.4% like a drop percentage this year, one of the highest in the NFL. Only accounted for 4 or 5 drops on the season. And especially when you have over 160 targets, that's a pretty good percentage, so Michael Pittman's hands really aren't the question. It seems like whenever it's close to him, he brings it in, but for 96% of the time. You talk about how physical he is. I mean, 6'4", over 220 pounds, I think 223, 225, big physical wide receiver, isn't afraid of contact. Usually it's not the first guy that can bring him down. Usually it takes a couple guys to bring Michael Pittman Jr. down. He runs like his father, the former Tampa Bay running back Michael Pittman Sr. ran. I mean, if you know who I'm talking about, Michael Pittman Sr. is famous for having absolute pythons for arms, massive biceps, and he would just run through you. Michael Pittman Jr. has that same demeanor. He actually started out coming up through the ranks of football as a running back. But when you grow to be 6'4" and have those long arms and that catching ability, you're best suited as not a running back, but a wide receiver. And Michael Pittman Sr. kind of steered him that way to be a wide receiver, saying, you're going to have a longer career as a wide receiver, making more money as a wide receiver as well. And Pittman kind of took that to heart. He was sad at first because he wasn't going to be able to be a running back, but he understood, and now he's become a fantastic wide receiver in the NFL after being a second round pick out of USC. So talk about his hands, his physicality. You mentioned the blocking ability. I think Michael Pittman is a very good blocker. I wouldn't say he's an elite blocker by any means for the Colts, but very good at the wide receiver position. And then just where he excels. You talked about the 50-50 balls, which I think the Colts don't use him enough on as far as deep shots down the field. And I'll kind of explain that here in a bit. But really those short to intermediate throws, going across the middle. He's not afraid to take a shot across the middle. He's pretty fearless in that regard, but just being that security blanket, he's the perfect possession wide receiver in today's NFL and for the Shane Steichen offense. That perfect X wide receiver that Steichen wants, Steichen loves, and that's why you see the Colts going to Pittman over and over and over again to move those chains.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I know Ballard mentioned in his press conferences. We need to be more explosive. You keep hearing that from Steichen. You heard it all off season. You heard it from Ballard in his press conference. And, Pittman really needed somebody else that could fit that bill because, like you said, he is that possession wide receiver and he's about as secure as it gets, and he's really good over the middle. That's like his bread and butter, is just finding holes in zones, and a lot of times he's also pretty good at separation. I know that bigger corners can probably at times maybe give him some issues just because they match up well with him size wise, but that's few and far between. There's not corners that are as big as Michael Pittman just growing on trees. So he's also good at separation, and again, he's about as reliable as you're going to get. He just gets targeted constantly, and more often than not, man, 109 catches out of 156 targets. That's pretty damn efficient.
And we haven't mentioned his leadership ability either. Michael Pittman has really taken over as a leader in that wide receiver room. He's the elder statesman in that wide receiver room. And not only has Pittman talked about kind of growing into that role, Reggie Wayne has seen it too. Reggie has talked about it on multiple occasions, how Pitt is a dog and he's the leader of that room. He keeps people accountable and he gets on people. If they're not focused, they're not dialed in. So it's something that I think Pittman, who came into the league as a quiet guy, someone that really didn't like to speak in front of people, and a lot of that was because growing up he had a speech impediment. He had a stutter, but he's grown out of that. He's learned to embrace that, learn to not make that a part of himself anymore, and he's really taken on a leadership role in that locker room, which is great to see. Now, weakness wise, Drake, you kind of talked about his route running, and I would agree there. I think he's a crisp route runner, but I do think he needs to he can still work on creating more separation, because there are times where it seems like Pittman can make things a little bit difficult just because he doesn't create the separation that other wide receivers can. He's certainly not a burner. He's not going to beat you down the field, but that's where that big body, that leaping ability comes in hand. I would love to see the Colts take more deep shots to Michael Pittman, not just strictly use him as the short to intermediate receiver. I understand Alec Pierce is a deep ball threat, and he's probably your deep ball is your best deep ball wide receiver, but open things up with Michael Pittman too. You get one-on-one coverage on the outside, and you can send you got Pittman deep, send it to him. Get it out there. Let the big 6'4" guy climb the ladder. We've seen him do it, like you said, against Baltimore. We saw him do it against Tennessee a couple years ago. We've seen him do it against San Francisco in the bomb cyclone against Baltimore. So he can go up there and make those big plays. You just got to give him some of those opportunities. So I think that would be the weaknesses, or maybe the if people want to talk about some of his go against his claim of why he shouldn't be paid as a number one wide receiver. As Stats Matt said, weakness isn't the twitchy guy, so his routes don't look as flashy. I think he likes to use his physicality, and that leads to him allowing it to happen instead of avoiding it, which I think is a good point. So Drake, where do you think are some of the weaknesses in Michael Pittman's game, or areas that he just needs to clean up in general?
I love what stats Matt said about twitchiness. Like he's not that, quick win guy. And if he does create separation, it is with more physicality. But I don't. This is more like as a ball carrier. He's not an elusive guy. Okay, he's probably more often than not going to make you miss. He's probably just going to try to run through you. Okay, so
I'd agree.
he's not a very elusive ball carrier or guy after the catch, but he's also not the fastest, and he's not the most explosive receiver. Now, I think that last one has been more of a product of just constant changes at quarterback.
I'd
All
agree.
right. Because when he had Carson Wentz, he looked pretty explosive at times. Anthony Richardson, you can't help but just assume he's probably going to be more explosive. But when you got these shorter, safer passers, the best example is Gardner Minshew. He's going to be a possession guy through and through. That's what he's going to do. He's going to get a lot of short completions. He's going to get a lot of targets that are, underneath 10 yards. That's just how it's going to be. So I think that last one's more of a product of he needs Anthony Richardson. But again, he's like you said, he's not going to create, I guess, like technical separation, like against the bigger bodied defensive backs or even defensive backs like Sauce Gardner, who would probably be able to
The
keep.
quicker, twitchier cornerbacks.
Yes, they'll be able to stay right on his hip. So the big physical corners and the really skilled, quick, fast corners that can keep up with pretty much anybody, Pittman could struggle against them, which again, that's where you really hope that, you can just get another guy that can, kind of also take the top off of a defense or, divert their attention elsewhere. Because if Pittman does face somebody that's, an elite cornerback, it could be, an issue for him at the end of the day because he's the only threat that's out there right now.
And I do think you can see things potentially open up when you have a healthy Anthony Richardson back there, because you think of the quarterbacks throughout his career. If Phillip Rivers at the end of his career, not much of an arm. You know what I'm talking about? So wasn't much down the field, and at that point, T.Y. Hilton was still the number one wide receiver for the team. Going to 2021, he did have more explosive plays, but you had a big arm Carson Wentz. 2022, Matt Ryan, whose arm was pretty much shot at that point. When you talk about then Nick Foles, not much different. Sam Ellinger, certainly not a big arm. Anthony Richardson kind of a little bit different story there, but then Gardner Minshew steps in, not exactly the best deep ball thrower either. So a lot of it will depend on the quarterback. You likely, with a bigger arm quarterback that's willing to take some shots, you're going to get more explosive plays. I also think it's Steichen allowing him to open up the playbook and open up his route tree a little bit, making sure he does mix in some deep shots to Michael Pittman there, just to test things, keep the defense honest, open things up. And I think we will see more of that in 2024 if Pittman does return for the Colts. But there's the thing. Will Pittman return for the Indianapolis Colts? Because when we talked to Pittman at the end of the season, he said he would love to return to Indy. He's loved his 4 years here, but he's excited to test free agency since he's never done it before, and he's going to do his due diligence and make sure that he really checks out every avenue, because he wouldn't be doing his family, he'd be doing them a disservice if he didn't make the best possible choice for him and his family. So there is still a chance that Pittman could go out there and test free agency. Certainly, likely if the Colts aren't able to strike a deal before that happens, or if the Colts are going to want him to allow him to go out there and test the market and kind of see what his value is. So Drake, I really want to know what your opinion on this is. Do you think it's a smart move for the Colts to let Pittman go out there and test free agency, or do you think that it's kind of playing with fire and they really need to lock Pittman up before that time comes, so that way other teams can't really try to get their hands on him?
It's not smart, right? But it's more of like like I'll put it this way: Anthony Richardson wants him back. Okay, Chris Ballard clearly wants him back. Okay, I'm assuming Shane Steichen wants him back. He dominated the target share. He dominated the offense. Okay, I think that this is more of a rapport thing. I think that Chris Ballard did it with Taylor. He let him go out there and seek a trade. And so I think that he's just doing Pittman a solid here. I think that he's being respectful, and you don't want to be the kind of GM creates a real big dissension between your front office and your best receiver. Okay. So they've treated Pittman very well. Okay. And he's gone out there and produced under ridiculously just chaotic circumstances at the most important parts of the team, be it the coach and the quarterback. So I don't think it's smart, but I think that it's needed. I know that sounds weird, but I just don't think he's going anywhere. I think that the Colts are so confident that they're going to retain him, and I think he wants to stay with this team. He's seen nothing but change. You can't tell me Pittman doesn't want to have Shane Steichen again, okay, with Jonathan Taylor again, and Anthony Richardson healthy with that offensive line that has appeared to come back to form. I think that he wants to stay. I just think that, it's like, hey, this is, you're coming off of your rookie contract here. This is your first big opportunity to go seek a big contract. And I think that, don't get me wrong, he's going to be worth a lot, right? But I think this is more of a confidence move from the Colts. And I think they're just being respectful and letting him do his thing. But ultimately, I don't think anything's going to happen. I think that he's going to remain a Colt.
I think it's a calculated risk if the Colts want to allow him to test free agency.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think it could really bite the Colts in the butt if they do this fair as well, because go out there and if it only takes one team to go out there and be willing to really overpay for Michael Pittman Jr. Go out there and really and throw maybe $27 million at Michael Pittman Jr. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but you never say never, and there could be just a team out there. So when you're doing that, he could become more expensive, and then all of a sudden you have a major hole at the wide receiver position if you do not bring back Michael Pittman Jr. Because like we mentioned earlier, when Pittman went down, I mean, yes, Josh Downs, you think he can be turned into a fantastic wide receiver. Alec Pierce, what he can do as a deep threat. The rest of his game still kind of up in the air. Behind that, there's really nothing. And the Colts would have to be relying on getting a very good rookie wide receiver probably in the first round. Then their hands would probably be tied in that aspect because you don't have a T.Y. Hilton to fall back on like when the Colts drafted Michael Pittman Jr. So you'd really be putting yourself in a box there. Sure, there is free agency. I mean, would you want to try to pay for a Mike Evans, a T. Higgins, bring somebody in there like that? But at that point, why don't you just keep Pittman? T. Higgins and Michael Pittman, practically the same player, and Pittman, he's going to be reliable for you. So I think it's very risky. And like you mentioned, Chris Ballard made it clear he wants him back. Pittman said that he would love to be back. Anthony Richardson said he hopes he's back. Shane Steichen said he hopes he's back as well. And Steichen mentioned it multiple times throughout the year, his affinity for Michael Pittman Jr. So it's very risky. And I don't know if the Colts really want to put themselves in a box there, because again, you let Michael Pittman go and you don't have an answer to replace him. That's not really doing your rookie quarterback or your soon to be second year quarterback that you're investing all of this time, all of this money, and building this team around. That's doing him a major disservice as well, and it's not going to be good for his development. So let's talk about what a contract could possibly look like. So I was looking at numbers earlier today, and then according to Spotrac, which is a very good website that usually gets these guys market value fairly close, they're predicting that Michael Pittman Jr. will sign a 4-year, $90 million contract, around $22.7 million on an average annual value. So that would put him around 9th or 10th as far as top wide receivers go for contracts. So Drake, what do you think? Do you think that's accurate, or what kind of contract are you expecting it's going to take for Michael Pittman to be re-signed by the Colts?
Yeah, before I answer that, look at us disagreeing. It's not often that we disagree, but like now, after you mentioned, it's kind of risky. Washington Commanders right now have $84 million in cap space. The New England Patriots have $70 million in cap space. I mean, those two teams right there. I mean, Houston and Tennessee, he's not going to go. I don't think he'd go to a divisional opponent, but I mean, those two teams stick out. But, I think that it's going to look That's actually pretty good. 22.7 million. That's pretty good. I would say though that there could be a team that pays like 24 or 25 million a year. Maybe it's 4 years, $100 million. I mean, I'm looking right here on Spotrac right now, and it says comparable players to Michael Pittman. We've selected the following players based on age, contract, and statistical statistical production to compare Michael Pittman Jr. to. Those names include A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, DJ Moore, and Terry McLaurin. Those are 4 dominant receivers. Okay, so I think that it's going to be 4 years. Okay. I think that that's on the money, but it's going to be between like 4 years and $90 million, or like 4 years. And if you really overpay for him, like 106 million or something like that. But it's going to be between like 22 and I would say about $26 million a year. I think that fits perfectly. And I think he's earned it.
Stats Matt in the chat says he's going with 4 years, $92.5
Okay.
million. I'm going to go just underneath that. I'm going to go 4 years, 92 million. That probably puts it on an average annual value of about $23 million a year. So I'm going to go just a little bit higher than Spotrac, I think, to get it over the edge. But again, that puts Pittman solidly within the top 10 on average annual value for wide receivers. I think that's probably what it's going to take to get that done. This is kind of what the Colts get for waiting and to re-sign Michael Pittman, waiting till this year was done. I think you could probably have gotten it done for around $18 to $19 million per year before this season began if the Colts re-signed him this past summer. But he goes out there, he has a career year, and he shows growth in a lot of aspects of his game. So because of that, I think he not only will command more money, but I think he's earned that money and he deserves that money, that extra money. So it may seem like a lot, guys. It may seem like a lot for Michael Pittman Jr. 4 years, $92 million. That's the going rate for a wide receiver one in the NFL these days. So that's why you have to kind of plan on these things. You can't be talking about going out and potentially getting Mike Evans and bringing him in with Michael Pittman, because then you're paying wide receivers 50, because Mike Evans probably another $25 million a year. You're talking about close to $50 million in 2 wide receivers. So it makes cap gymnastics a little difficult. So, and I'm sure the Colts could get that, but then you're got to think there's still like Grover Stewart, Kenny Moore II. Those guys need to be paid too. So it's going to be just interesting how the Colts maneuver some of this cap space and how they use it. But I think they kind of are into our next question here of how high of a priority is Michael Pittman Jr. on their offseason list. The way that Chris Ballard talked, again, this was one of the nuggets that I really focused in on, because Ballard doesn't BS at the mic. He tells you what he's thinking. And if he doesn't, he hints at it. And he just flat out came out and said it, bringing back Michael Pittman Jr. is a priority, and we want to have him back. So Michael Pittman Jr. is probably their top priority this offseason as far as candidates and in-house free agents that they want to re-sign. 26 years old, he's an ascending player. He's getting better each and every year. And again, without consistent quarterback play, you put Anthony Richardson in there, Drake, and you can create this connection as Anthony Richardson gets better and develops, as Michael Pittman continues to kind of work on his game. Just the type of person he is, not only on the field but in the locker room. It's just a perfect fit, and I think he fit, and I think he is the top priority for the Indianapolis Colts this offseason, and as he should be, for considering where this Colts team is and where they're going as a team.
Yeah, and we've kind of beat it, through the ground, the Atlanta Falcons game. But I'll talk about kind of something you mentioned. You drafted Anthony Richardson, okay, and you drafted him for the long term. You also signed Steichen, I believe, and of course it can always change, midway through, but like a 6-year contract. Okay, you have Jonathan Taylor still, I would say, in his prime. You just signed him. Okay, you still have some younger pieces on that offensive line. I know Kelly's, over 30 at this point, but that offensive line overall is still pretty young, all things considered. So you're also looking at just one more real big pass catcher, playmaker, explosive player, a wide receiver, or, if Jelani Woods can return, you've got him too. You're only like one playmaker away from this offense being something that could be absolutely special. Okay. You let Michael Pittman go, it really knocks that down a lot of pegs, man. Okay. And I think that the number one priority is you want someone that's reliable for Anthony Richardson to be able to throw the ball to. And that guy is Michael Pittman. He's done it with a bunch of different quarterbacks. You can't tell me he can't do it with Anthony Richardson too. So it's absolutely number one. I know that Grover is a huge priority, big run defender. Kenny Moore is their best corner. Even Julian Blackman, while we think he's probably the odd man out, if they can figure out a way to sign him, they're probably going to do it. But man, none of those guys, and I hate to say it, are the priority that Michael Pittman Jr. is, just because of how important wide receivers are in a passing league. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. These wide receivers can really shine and help quarterbacks that aren't even, upper tier guys look that way. I mean, you saw it with Drake London, who I think is going to be like Michael Pittman, with Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder. I mean, good Lord. Michael Pittman is without question number one priority. You got to retain him. And if you don't, like you said, that's going to take a huge hit to this offense, and it could set them back a season or two.
And guys, I know the Colts have holes across this roster still that they have to fill. But again, it hasn't changed since last April. It's all about Anthony Richardson. And how are you going to put Anthony Richardson in the best position to succeed, and allowing his number one wide receiver to walk without anyone currently on the roster that you can confidently say will step in to that role. That's roster building malpractice, in my opinion. Do you talk about Mike Evans? Sure, he's a big name that you'd like to bring in. Number one, Mike Evans, after where the Buccaneers have gone, I don't even know if he leaves Tampa Bay at this point. And he's 30 years old. He's on the back end of his career. That really doesn't help the Colts out any. Michael Pittman's 26, just kind of entering the prime years of his NFL career. T. Higgins, viable option, but at the same time, T. Higgins, he does a lot of the same things Michael Pittman does, and you've had Michael Pittman in the building for 4 years. You haven't had T. Higgins in the building, so wouldn't you just want to keep the guy that's been in your building, and you know what you're going to get with that guy, and who's already started building a chemistry with Anthony Richardson? I think that's my thinking on the situation, but it's prediction time, Drake. As of, let's say we're talking in March, end of March, early April. Is Michael Pittman Jr. a Colt for the long term? Yes or no? And how do you think it gets done?
Absolutely is my answer. And I think it gets done with, I like yours and Stats Matt's prediction of about 4 years, $92.5 million. Look, I know that you mentioned T. Higgins. T. Higgins has also had Jamar Chase on the same core as him, and Joe Burrow throwing him the freaking football. I mean, Michael Pittman hasn't had anything close to that. Mm-hmm. So God knows what happens if you put T. Higgins in a number one role with a developing quarterback. So I think that it's going to get done. A timeline, you thought originally it's going to happen right after the season's over, right? But now you're kind of thinking, you really don't know. I would assume it's once he's kind of gone out there and seen what's available. And I do also think that if a team makes a bid on him, I just think that the Colts are going to try to beat it, which, now that I'm thinking about it, goes back to your argument of it might be a little foolish that they let him go out there. But regardless, I think it's going to get done. It's going to be between that $23 million and $25 million a year mark. And again, he's earned it, and you cannot stress it enough that you don't want Anthony Richardson to walk into year 2 without number 11 out there. That could be disastrous, man.
Exactly. Sarah coming in here with her prediction. She says, I think 4 years, $93 million for Pittman Jr. Now, as far as when it gets done, Stats Matt has an interesting thought. He says, yes, he'll be signed, and he'll be signed the day before free agency starts. Deadlines always spur action. So that's a great point, Stats Matt, and it's an interesting one too, because I was kind of thinking, when might this deal possibly get done for Pittman and the Colts if they're able to come to a long-term extension? And I'm not I'm almost thinking it might come A little bit before that. I think it's probably going to come closer to the franchise tag deadline. Not exactly. I don't think it's going to come all the way up to free agency, but I do think Michael Pittman said, if I'm tagged publicly, he said if I'm tagged, I'm not going to be mad about $23 million. But at the same time, you don't necessarily want to play on it. But you also got to think who his agent is. David Mulligetta, who was the guy that was able to establish and negotiate the fully guaranteed contract for Deshaun Watson. So he's a hell of an agent, and he plays hardball at times. So I'm almost thinking it's going to probably come closer to that franchise tag date where the Colts will need to make a decision. And so you could look there, but I also love Stats Matt's idea the day before free agency starts because if the Colts don't want to really risk allowing him to go to free agency and potentially getting that huge deal, they're going to lock him up. But I've seen a lot of Colts fans on social media talking about just I'm really nervous that Pittman's going to go. And I understand that there is a chance. Never say never. But I'm very, very confident. I'm really not losing sleep over Michael Pittman's free agency. I fully expect him to be back in a Colts uniform next year and beyond. The Colts, Chris Ballard has always talked about, Bill or keeping their own. They've done it with Jonathan Taylor, Quentin Nelson, Braden Smith, Ryan Kelly. They gave a big contract to Shaquille Leonard. Michael Pittman's just the next one in a long line. Kenny Moore, Grover Stewart as well. I think those guys will be back, but they've also received contracts to keep them in their homegrown as a homegrown part of the Colts. I just think Michael Pittman's going to be the same way. I think he's going to get top 10 wide receiver money for now. I think it's probably going to be around $23 million a year on the average annual value. And that's going to lock up your wide receiver one long term. Now, and I think that's just going to not only help this offense stay together, we're going to see Michael Pittman Jr. thrive. But again, the most important aspect of this Colts team and building this roster right now is helping Anthony Richardson. And when you keep your wide receiver one locked up with your young quarterback, and they've already started to develop some good chemistry together, that's huge. That is absolutely imperative for the Colts to do. And that's why I think Michael Pittman Jr. is going to be with the Colts for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and you have to think about what is he going to look like with consistent quarterback play? What is he going to look like with consistently good offensive play calling? This is a guy who is averaging over 80 catches a season, and he had 40 to start his career. That just shows you how much this dude has taken off. And you said it earlier, he just continues to get better. I think that the Colts need to keep him around, and I think that I'm right there with you. When they keep him around, it's going to really help Anthony Richardson. And they're just about one more playmaker away from really making that offense exactly what Steichen and Ballard want it to be. And that is consistently explosive.
And you know who that one playmaker is? As Unboxing Mania says, Brock Bowers. My guy. Listen,
Oh man,
we need to get this start rolling. We need to get the Brock Bowers train rolling in Indianapolis. Feel like I'm the only one pushing this agenda. Let's make it happen.
No, it'd be great.
Colts need to draft Brock Bowers. Unboxing Mania, you have a friend in me, my brother. So so let's talk about the latest Colts news and rumors here, Drake. And guys, Drake has a pretty full cup. So we need to get that boy sipping on that drink. What you sipping on tonight, Drake?
So it's actually I can't remember the brand, but it's actually ginger. It's non-alcoholic ginger beer, but it's half and half with New Amsterdam vodka. So we're talking a little bit of the crisper stuff here.
Okay. Keeping it light. I love it. So let's talk about the latest Colts news and rumors. And there's really only one thing that came out this weekend, and it was about Jim Bob Cooter. It's not a guy you would really expect to be in the news, but reports are that Jim Bob Cooter could be an option for the Eagles offensive coordinator position if their current offensive coordinator, Brian Johnson, is either fired or moves on to in a different capacity with another team. So you're thinking, why would the Colts allow that? Well, the Colts certainly can block it, especially since it is a lateral move, but something that Jim Bob Cooter would have in Philadelphia that he doesn't have in Indianapolis, play calling duties because Nick Sirianni does not call the plays for the Eagles. Shane Steichen does call the plays for the Colts. So Jim Bob Cooter went over to the Eagles. He would be able to call the plays as the offensive coordinator. And there is a connection there because Jim Bob Cooter was on the Eagles staff as a consultant when Sirianni and Steichen were together over there as with the Eagles. So Drake, again, this is all kind of speculation at this point, but I mean, I could certainly see it, but I don't know if this is something that will happen. I would say at this point, it's probably 50-50 of the Colts losing Jim Bob Cooter to the Eagles this offseason.
Yeah, and look, I know that Steichen calls the plays, but JBC has been an integral part of developing Anthony Richardson along with quarterbacks coach Cam Turner and Steichen. And now I just saw that Brian Callahan is they're finalizing a deal for him to become the next coach of the Tennessee Titans, man. Okay, so like this, I know Jim Bob Cooter's not calling the plays, but I think that you should at least try for one more year. This is just an opinion. I think you should try to keep that core of offensive-minded guys around because Jim Bob Cooter is still a part of what the Colts are doing offensively. It's just Shane Steichen is the play caller. So, man, I think that given how big of a collapse Philadelphia has had and it was epic. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers walked into that game and beat the brakes off that team. And their defense looked like a top 10 defense. And the Colts, don't forget, defeated the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I think that the Eagles could really use a guy like JBC for sure. But, man, I also think that the Colts would be letting go a good voice in that offensive room, a good voice in Shane Steichen's ear because he does still turn to JBC for some advice and for some offensive, creativity. So my opinion is I think you should block it, but it is a league where if you do even a little bit of good, there's a good chance that you're just going to find yourself in a different position with more to do and potentially, more of an upward trajectory. And who knows, if he goes to Philly and calls some incredible plays and gets them back on track, maybe he could be in line for a head coaching role down the road. And if that is something that could be of a possibility, maybe Philadelphia tries to make it happen and maybe the Colts allow it to happen.
You never know. Shout out to my beautiful wife Danielle for her super sticker, doing her work to get Drake a little tipsy on this Monday evening. Appreciate all of your support.
Monday, man, we got to,
as always. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, Brian Callahan being hired as the Tennessee Titans head coach, a guy that I pushed heavily for the Colts last season to hire before Shane Steichen was ultimately named as the head coach. So that'll be something to watch down the line, and the Colts will have to face off against Brian Callahan twice a year for the foreseeable future. As Danielle says, clear it, Drake. Well, hey, you're gonna have to get listen. We're gonna have to get a few more drinks in here, a few more super chats in here before Drake clears his drink. But yeah, I mean, I think it would be interesting for Jim Bob Cooter. And Skizzle asks a question: what does Jim Bob Cooter do? And I've seen this question a lot for offensive coordinators who don't call plays. Now listen, guys, offensive coordinators, their lone job isn't just to call plays. They are much more involved than that. Jim Bob Cooter helps set up the game plan every single week for Shane Steichen. He helps with the personnel groupings. He's the one he's heavily involved with the quarterbacks and with Anthony Richardson and his work. So just because an offensive coordinator isn't calling plays on Sundays doesn't mean they're not doing anything. Brian Callahan with the Cincinnati Bengals did not call plays. Zach Taylor called the plays, and Zach Taylor was the one, and now Brian Callahan is a head coach in the NFL. So heavily involved with the game plan. Jim Bob Cooter has a big hand as far as working with Cam Turner and Anthony Richardson and the rest of the quarterbacks, personnel, helping with the scouting reports as well. So Jim Bob Cooter is a very vital part of what the Colts do on the offensive side of the ball. So it would certainly be a big loss. And then there is thought, well, does Brian Johnson, the guy that Jim Bob Cooter would be replacing, does he come to the Indianapolis Colts? Because Brian Johnson was the quarterback coach at Florida for Anthony Richardson in 2020. And Brian Johnson has worked with Shane Steichen in the past, did wonders as a QB coach for Jalen Hurts when Steichen was there. So do you think maybe would you think Cam Turner goes up to offensive coordinator under Steichen, or say someone like Tom Manning, the tight ends coach who's been an offensive coordinator before at Iowa State? Does he get a shot at OC? That's just internal candidates. And then does Brian Johnson come on as a quarterback coach because he has that familiarity and he's worked with Richardson before and has a history of working well with like Jalen Hurts? We'll have to see. But right now it's all speculation. I saw the reports on NFL Network from Mike Garafolo of this, so thought we would be a good discussion, but we don't even know if it's going to happen. So we'll have to wait and see if Jim Bob Cooter actually leaves the Colts, or if the Colts would block a potential move there, because I know Shane Steichen is very, very high on Jim Bob Cooter, and so is the rest of the offense. A lot of the offensive personnel, they love Jim Bob Cooter. He's the leader of that offensive coaching staff under Shane Steichen, and the players really love playing for him too. So it'd be a bigger loss than people think. But back to the kind of the crux and the main topic of our episode, Drake. Michael Pittman Jr. While some fans may be nervous, I don't think they should be. I fully expect Pittman to be back wearing number 11 for the Indianapolis Colts next season and continuing to rise as a wide receiver, and hopefully this time with a healthy Anthony Richardson throughout 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, and again, I'm right there with you, because you drafted Anthony Richardson for the long term. You signed Shane Steichen to a long-term contract, and he brought in all these personnel: Tony Sperano Jr., Cam Turner, JBC, and Michael Pittman is a massive part of this. Okay, so I think that it was more of a respect thing. Ballard saying, we're not gonna bind you to our franchise. We're gonna let you do what you need to do for your family, because at the end of the day, I know that these guys are millionaires, right? I know that they're professional athletes and they're in the limelight. This is still a freaking job. All right, it's a very high paying job, and you still want to make as much money as humanly possible for your family and for yourself. So I think it was more of a respect thing, but absolutely, Michael Pittman is just as important, damn near as important as Anthony Richardson to this franchise, as guys like Jonathan Taylor, Quentin Nelson, and anybody else on that offense. So fully expect number 11 to suit back up in a Colts uniform with a 4-year, like $90+ million contract for sure.
I would agree. So that's our show for tonight, guys. Really appreciate everybody tuning in to talk about Michael Pittman Jr. and his future with the Indianapolis Colts. Want to give a shout out to our super chats for the evening. Patrick Rye, all the way from Disney World, making sure to come in and give his super chat. And then my beautiful wife, Danielle, for hers as well. And thanks to everybody else who joined in to talk Colts football with us this evening. We really, really appreciate it. And if you haven't done so, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know whenever Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday night, and for special breaking news episodes so you never miss us live. And if you can't catch us on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. Drake, let the people know what you've been writing on horseshoehuddle.com, because you've got a couple really good ones out there on the site right now.
Oh man, you're a scholar and a saint. Thank you. I did 3 Colts who must improve the most in 2024, how 5 Indianapolis Colts graded in 2023, and then I have one coming out, 3 free agents that the Colts should definitely consider signing, and they're not big bank guys. I think they're right there within the budget, to the point where all 3 could potentially get inked up to contracts.
Make sure you go check those out. For myself, there's been a lot of talk about Pro Football Focus grades recently, but I think they still provide some really good insight, especially some of the premium stats that Pro Football Focus provides. So I do have out on the site, I do have the top 5 Colts that on offense, the top 5 graded Colts players on the offensive side of the ball for 2023, and soon I'll have out the top 5 defenders, top 5 graded defenders on the Colts for the 2023 season as well. Drake, NFL nerd, coming in hot with a final super chat saying finish the drink. Drake's going to finish that drink, and while he does, go give him a follow. Go follow Drake at DWalsterDrake on X. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we'll be back Thursday night to talk more Colts football with you all as the offseason is in full swing. So for Drake and myself, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you Thursday night.